Okay, hello everyone again and welcome. Thank you very much for joining Dragon Trail International and ForwardKeys for today's webinar. We have the most up-to-date flight bookings data and traveler sentiment data to share with you today, just in time for China's upcoming National Day holiday next week. My name is Sienna Perulis-Cook, and I'm Dragon Trail's Director of Marketing and Communications. Joining us from Dragon Trail's research team, we have Janice Meng and Tiana Tien, and we're also very pleased to have with us today Nancy Dai, the China market expert from ForwardKeys. On the agenda today, we're going to start with a very brief update on some of the latest developments in Chinese outbound tourism. Then I'll turn over to Nancy to present the data from ForwardKeys on Chinese bookings for the upcoming holiday and 2024 so far, as well as some of the key trends that we can see from that data. Then Janice and I will reveal the results of Dragon Trail's newest Chinese traveler sentiment report, which is based on a survey conducted this August. At the end of the webinar, all four of us will be available to answer questions in a live Q&A session. So do feel free to send in questions at any point during the webinar by using the Q&A button on your Zoom control panel, and then we'll answer as many questions as we can at the end of the session. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll follow up later today to share a link to that recording, as well as to send you all of the webinar slides. So you'll have all of the content from today's presentation for future reference or to share with other colleagues. For those of you who might be joining us for the first time or aren't familiar with Dragon Trail International, we are a marketing solutions company focused mainly on marketing Chinese outbound tourism to Chinese consumers and to the Chinese travel trade through social media, websites, and influencer campaigns, online, hybrid, and offline events, representation services, and research and strategy consulting. We work with tourism brands and businesses all around the world, including destinations, airlines and airports, attractions, hotels, industry, events, retailers, and more. You can find more information about our clients, our services, and case studies of our work, as well as lots of free resources on Chinese outbound tourism trends and digital marketing on our website, www.dragontrail.com. Our research arm, Dragon Trail Research, was founded in 2019. And in addition to the Chinese traveler sentiment surveys that we've been conducting regularly since the spring of 2020, we also offer research services to clients, including bespoke surveys, focus groups, travel trade insights, and more. Okay, let's get started with today's presentation with a quick update on some China travel news. I'd like to give some wider context to ForwardKeys flight bookings data and Dragon Trail's consumer sentiment research by looking at a number of indicators and data points relating to China's outbound tourism recovery. Overall, we can say that the total volume of outbound tourism from China has still not reached pre-pandemic levels, but actually we do continue to see significant positive growth in the market in many different quantifiable ways, and this provides a really good objective basis for our optimism. Q2 data from several of China's biggest OTAs saw extremely high year-on-year growth, with outbound hotel and flight reservations recovering to pre-pandemic levels on the Trip.com group's platforms, and outbound flight bookings surpassing all previous records on Tongchun. Visa services provider VFS Global says that as of August, visa applications have reached 70% of 2019's levels, and they were up by 88% year-on-year. And don't forget that quite a few countries have become visa-free for Chinese travelers just in the last year. The number of Chinese passports issued this year is up 25% year-on-year. Mainland China border crossings were up by more than 62% year-on-year in the first half of 2024, though this also includes the 17.25 million inbound trips made by foreign nationals, which is an increase of nearly 130%. Q2 international air passenger numbers in Chinese airports reached 85.5% of 2019's levels. And lastly, Chinese tax-free shopping overseas continues to surpass 2023 levels, according to data from tax refund provider Global Blue. Tax-free spend in Europe was only around half of pre-pandemic levels this August, but tax-free spending in the Asia-Pacific region was well ahead of pre-pandemic figures. Now, looking forward, let's look at some data from the travel industry about the upcoming National Day holiday, which runs from the 1st to the 7th of October and is always an annual peak for outbound travel. Based on data from Chinese and international OTAs, outbound travel this Golden Week is on track to reach around double of 2023's numbers. In early August, ly.com shared that bookings for long-haul outbound travel were almost double 2023's numbers, with Europe a particularly popular destination. Recent hotel booking data from the Trip.com group, which owns Ctrip and Chunar, is similar. They report a 113% increase in hotel bookings for the holiday period and an incredible 336% increase year-on-year for hotel bookings in Europe. Online hotel booking platform Agoda has reported a 137% increase in searches from China for outbound accommodation during the holiday period. And the top destinations on their platform are Seoul, Tokyo, Bali, Bangkok, and Osaka. Outbound flight bookings on Chunar have also doubled, with travelers planning trips to a total of 144 different countries and regions. Most of the destinations with the highest growth rates are along the Silk Road, including Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Tajikistan, as well as in Africa. So now I'm going to hand over to Nancy to present much more data about Chinese outbound flight bookings from ForwardKeys.
Thank you, Sienna. Let me share my screen. Yep, so hello everyone. I'm Nancy, China expert at ForwardKeys. I'm thrilled to be with you here today to talk about the exciting recovery trends in China's travel market for 2024. So let's jump right in. A few words about ForwardKeys and the data we will be using in this presentation. So we are a B2B travel analytics company specializing in air travel. We use extensive data to help our clients better understand travel trend and demand in real time. In today's presentation, we will be using two key data sets to look into the future travel. So that's issued air tickets and seat capacity. So let's kick things off with an overview of the Chinese outbound travel trend. So since reopening in January 2023, China's outbound travel has been on a steady rise. This graph illustrates this trend clearly, showing how outbound travel is getting closer to pre-pandemic levels. By Q4 last year, the gap had narrowed to 41% compared to 2019 figures. And as we enter 2024, this positive momentum continued, with the difference reducing further to just 24% by Q2 2024. This steady improvement is a great sign of growing confidence among travelers and signals a promising recovery for the Chinese outbound travel. And let's now shift our attention to one of the most exciting times in China's travel calendar, so the Golden Week holiday. This period, filled with celebrations and travel, offers a fascinating time into the current travel trends and patterns. So let's dive in. Every year, China's National Golden Week takes place from 1st of October to 7th of October. And this year, it's exciting to see that international departure are just 15% below 2019 levels and a remarkable 32% higher than in 2023. This indicates a strong resurgence in travel during this holiday. And as you can see here, actually last year, Golden Week lined up with Mid-Autumn Festival. so resulting an extended 8-day holiday, where the busiest travel day was just the first day of the holiday break. And this year, however, we are seeing a different pattern with multiple peaks in travel activities. Notably, September 28th, the Saturday before the holiday, we saw a surge in travelers, along with the day before the holiday, and then the very first day of the holiday itself. So this shift highlights how travelers are spreading out their departures to make the most of their time off. And when looking at departure cities, Tier 1 cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou have traditionally handled the bulk of Chinese outbound travel. However, we are now seeing significant potential emerging from non-Tier 1 cities. While Tier 1 cities faced challenges, non-Tier 1 cities such as Hangzhou, Nanjing, and Shenzhen surpassed 2019 levels. And this trend underscores the growing importance of these non-Tier 1 cities. And when we take a look at the top outbound destinations during Golden Week, it's clear that Asia continues to capture a significant share of Chinese travelers, even with an 11% decrease overall on 2019 levels. And Kuala Lumpur truly shines with an impressive 142% increase in visitors, while Hong Kong, Macau, and Singapore also enjoying double-digit growth, and thanks to the more relaxed entry policies. And then also we see Tokyo, Seoul, and Osaka are also the most popular destinations during the upcoming Golden Week. And in Bangkok, we are expecting a 2% growth despite some ongoing safety concerns. And this boost can be credited to target promotions, including special deals with Chinese travel platforms and discounts for Chinese passport holders. Plus, the Tourism Authority of Thailand is launching its Ni Hao Month campaign from September to October, aiming to attract 250,000 Chinese visitors during Golden Week as part of a year-long celebration leading into 2025. And looking beyond Asia, long-haul destinations are on track to recover to just 26% below 2019 levels. Cities like Moscow and Dubai continue to draw interest, but European and Australian cities are really standing out here. So Istanbul, London, and Milan have all achieved double-digit growth, while Melbourne and Sydney are gaining traction with Chinese travelers thanks to improved flight connectivity and relaxed visa requirements, something we will explore in more detail later on. So while the outlook for outbound travel is promising, domestic travel is also expected to remain strong, with flight bookings currently just 17% below 2019 levels. During the holiday period, Chengdu, a popular travel hotspot often highlighted on China's social media, is set to lead the way, exceeding 2019 levels by 19%. Interestingly, Urumqi in Xinjiang is also showing great potential, is on track for nearly full recovery. This trend likely driven by the success of Chinese hit TV show To the Wonder, which is set to make Xinjiang a sought-after destination, especially for young travelers. They will be drawn in by the stunning scenery and the warm, welcoming lifestyle of the local residents. Okay, so we just look at the travel outlook for Golden Week, and now let's dive into some key travel trends that are shaping Chinese outbound travel. So looking through the profiles of passengers during this holiday period, it becomes evident that group travel is not as popular as it used to be, both for long-haul and short-haul travel. there has been a 53% reduction in group travelers for long-haul journeys and a 43% decrease for short-haul trips compared to 2019. Now, couples and single travelers represent much better business opportunities. Just looking at short-haul travel from China, the number of solo travelers has increased by 4%, while couple travelers are only 2% down on 2019 levels. And a notable change in travelers' behavior we have noticed is that trips are now being booked with shorter lead times compared to the past. As shown here, year-to-date travel indicates that the share of trips booked less than 29 days in advance for Chinese international travel to Asian destinations has increased by over 2 percentage points compared to the same period in 2019. Additionally, for travel to Europe, the share of trips booked 30 to 59 days in advance has increased by more than 3 percentage points. This shift is likely linked to more easier visa policies, which can streamline the planning process and allow travelers to finalize their trips more quickly. And then, looking at the impact of relaxed visa policies on Chinese travelers, here we take Malaysia, Singapore, and Australia as example. We can observe a consistent and growing trend across all three countries. So shortly after implementing these laid-back visa requirements, each country experienced an immediate boost in travel interest, with increasing as early as 1 week after the policy was announced. As time progressed, this positive impact continued to grow, with travel numbers climbing further after 1 month and reaching even more impressive levels by the 3rd month. For example, Australia's relaxed visa policy from 21st of June this year demonstrated the most dramatic growth, with an initial 12% uptake in 1 week, followed by a 48% increase after 1 month, and finally 65% rise after 3 months. So this upward trend highlights that relaxed visa policies not only create an initial spike in visitor numbers, but also sustain and even enhance interest over time. As more travelers learn from these benefits, this destination become increasingly appealing to Chinese tourists. And then in the last section, let's take a closer look at the latest trends in flight connectivity. So we can now observe that the international scheduled seat capacity leaving China in 2024 across different regions. Africa and the Middle East, along with Asia Pacific, are demonstrating steady recovery, while the Americas are still falling short. Meanwhile, Europe is notable for its positive trend, steadily narrowing the gap to pre-pandemic levels and expected to surpass 2019 figures in Q4. We can also look at the evolving travel patterns of Chinese travelers heading to Europe. Since 2019, there's been a significant shift, with more travelers choosing direct flights and bypassing the hassle of connecting through hubs. This trend not only speed up journeys and as convenience, but often reduce costs as well. So the share of direct flights has increased by 12 percentage points compared to 2019 for Chinese travel to Europe. And one major factor driving this change is the limited availability of direct flights from China to the US following pandemic. So Chinese airlines have shifted their wide-body aircrafts to other long-haul markets, particularly Europe. This adjustment is further supported by the difficulties faced by European airlines due to the closure of Russian airspace, creating opportunities for Chinese carriers to expand their flight capacity to Europe. Additionally, China is actively enhancing is cooperation with European countries in areas like travel and business, which is further fueling the growth of direct flight options between China and Europe. And looking at the direct flight connection from China to Europe in the second half of 2024, we can see some destinations truly stand out. Milan leads the way with an impressive 77% increase in direct seat capacity compared to 2019, followed closely by Madrid and Istanbul. London and Rome also show strong growth, reflecting a positive recovery trend. Yeah, so that's all for my presentation, and thanks for your attention. Here are some key takeaways before I hand it over. So first, outbound Chinese travel is rapidly nearing pre-pandemic levels, with a strong outlook for upcoming Golden Week. And second, is the visa regulations and enhanced flight connectivities are attracting more Chinese travelers than ever. And third, we are seeing a shift towards solo and couple travel, along with shorter planning times. Last but not least, effectively using data can help us anticipate demand and make informed business decisions. And thank you again, and I will now pass it over to Sienna.
Thank you so much, Nancy. It was really fascinating data. And just to reiterate to everyone, we will be sharing the presentation slides from today with everyone later today. So you'll have all of the great information from Nancy's presentation to hand to see later. I am now very excited to give you the very first look at the results of Dragon Trail's 11th Chinese Traveler Sentiment Survey, and Janice will get us started with that.
Thank you very much, Nancy and Sienna. I am Janice Meng, Market Research Analyst from Dragon Trail International, and I am very glad to be here to share with you the results of our latest Chinese Traveler Sentiment Survey. So in the 5th year of our research on Chinese travelers, the latest results will reveal most up-to-date changes in consumer preferences and behaviors in the post-pandemic era, as well as future outlooks. Our latest survey was conducted between August 12th to 20th, and we received over 1,000 valid responses from mainland Chinese consumers who are interested in travel. 51% of them have traveled outside mainland China in the past. We controlled for the distribution of age and gender to make sure that the survey sample was representative of the Chinese outbound travel market. So let's start with the outbound travel experiences and plans for 2024, which again show positive signs of continuing recovery in addition to the market data that Nancy and Sienna has just shared today. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, thank you. 67% of our survey respondents have either traveled outbound or plan to travel during this calendar year. As of August, 16% have already taken at least one outbound trip, compared to only 5% in March 2024 and 4% in August 2023. This group of 160 respondents are very active travelers. 60% of them have taken 2 or more outbound trips this year. And the young segments in China are especially enthusiastic about outbound travel. Half of the travelers aged between 18 to 24 have made 2 outbound trips, while the 25 to 34 age group has the highest proportion of travelers making at least 3 outbound trips. For the remaining months of this year, Chinese consumers' intention to travel outbound is still significant. 17% of total respondents have an outbound trip already booked, with an additional 34% hadn't booked their trips yet, but hoping to travel overseas during the year. 21% were unsure about their plans, and 12% said they definitely would not travel abroad this year. Compared with data from survey results 1 year ago, we see decreasing passive sentiments on outbound travel. Over 50% of respondents were undecided on or reject outbound travel in our August 2023 survey. And now let's look at when Chinese tourists prefer to take outbound trips. We first asked the 160 respondents who had already traveled overseas in 2024 when they took their most recent outbound trip. The majority of them stated that they traveled between March and July. For the rest of the year, October is definitely the peak season of outbound travel, with the upcoming 7-day National Day holiday. Among the 633 respondents who had already traveled outbound but still plan to travel more, those who had already booked outbound trips or hope to travel outbound this year, 38% of them would plan to travel this month. This brings us to the travel planning of Chinese travelers. For travelers who had already taken or booked outbound trips for 2024, around 2/3 of them started to plan their outbound trips 2 months or less before traveling, with 34% waiting until the last month before departure. Only 5.4% plan their trips more than 6 months in advance. The most common trip length ranges from 4 days to 2 weeks, selected by 76% of the respondents. Next, let's turn to destinations of outbound travel in 2024. The Greater China destinations of Macau, Hong Kong, and South Korea. Macau, Hong Kong were the most visited, followed by other Asian destinations of South Korea, Japan, and Thailand. These 5 destinations are also on the top of the wish lists for future groupings or travel plans in 2024. Outside of Asia, Germany, France, the United States, and New Zealand were the most popular long-haul destinations that travelers had already visited. As in our last 2 surveys, Iceland once again ranked among the top 10 destinations that Chinese travelers wish to visit. So looking at the world regions for outbound travel, Asia was once again the most popular region, but Europe continued to stand out for long-haul travel. Asia was visited by 80% of survey respondents on their most recent outbound trips in 2024 and accounted for 65.9% of planned trips for the rest of the year. In addition to the destinations on the previous slide, other top visited Asian destinations included Maldives and Vietnam, and Europe saw greater desire from Chinese travelers when it comes to future planning, selected by 25.3% of respondents and covering 28 countries. As for motivation for outbound travel in 2024, to relax and unwind continued to be the top 1 reason, selected by nearly half of the survey respondents who have traveled outbound or have trips planned for this year. Exploring different scenery and cultures in the world is also appealing to Chinese travelers. In addition, 1/3 said they travel abroad this year to enjoy life and pursue a high-quality travel experience. And to understand more about the diverse motivations of Chinese outbound travelers, we asked those respondents who had previously taken outbound trips what events or activities they have engaged in. Results show that Chinese tourists' purposes for traveling outside of mainland China span a broad spectrum, ranging from nature, arts and culture, and sporting activities. Visiting national parks, zoos, or theme parks, taking city tours, visiting museums and cultural exhibitions, attending featured festival events or musical performances are some of the top attractions for Chinese tourists. And as 70% of respondents had previously attended an arts or sports event or participated in a cultural activity while traveling overseas, we took a deep dive into the live events that are driving the Chinese outbound market. From visiting museums or watching operas in Europe, watching pop concerts, to attending fireworks festivals in Japan and Hong Kong, and going to the 2024 Paris Olympics. Their answers once again demonstrate the diverse and personalized motivation behind Chinese travelers' outbound travel choices. And now to present the rest of our results, I will turn over to Sienna.
Thank you very much, Janice. Now let's look at 3 industries in a little bit more detail, starting with cruises. We asked the 87 survey respondents who had said they previously had taken an outbound cruise trip about where they had gone on that trip or trips. As you can see, Japan is by far the most common answer, followed by South Korea, Singapore, and Macau, although we did have survey respondents who had gone on cruises in Europe, Thailand, and a few in the US. When we asked them about which aspects were most important to them when considering outbound cruise travel, we found that budget and pricing were by far the most important factors, chosen by 52%. This compares to only 32% who picked the cruise destination. So this really underscores the importance of deals and promotions in marketing cruise trips to Chinese travelers. That said, the results were a bit different for the higher end of the market, and we found that travelers earning 25,000 renminbi or more a month were much more likely to consider the cruise's dining experience and cabin and facilities than the average traveler. You'll find more information about these results in our report. Next, let's look at self-driving travel. Chinese car rental platform Zhuzuche reported a 50% year-on-year growth for outbound car rentals this summer, so this is definitely an area to watch. Among the 116 survey respondents who had previously done outbound self-driving travel, 58% had driven in urban areas, with 47% doing highway self-driving and 38% driving in coastal and island areas. For the hotel industry, we decided to focus on hotel loyalty programs. We found that 16% of our survey respondents were members of hotel loyalty programs already, and among these, Hilton is definitely the most popular. When we asked about the appeal of hotel membership incentives, the responses from those who were already members were very similar to those who hadn't yet joined hotel loyalty programs. Exclusive discounts were the biggest incentive, chosen by 68%, followed by late checkout and online room selection. So here again, we can see the appeal of discounts and deals like we saw from the cruise travel question. And that brings us to travel budgets. The answers about budgets for upcoming outbound trips were almost the same as they were in our spring survey, with nearly half of travelers budgeting between 10,000 and 30,000 renminbi for their next outbound trip, which is between 1,400 and 4,200 US. We asked travelers where they would want to spend more of their budget and found that food and drink was the most popular category, chosen by 76%. 66% would want to spend more on entertainment. The results here are actually quite similar to a survey of young Chinese travelers that was conducted earlier this year by travel website Mafengwo. And the big difference between our results and the Mafengwo survey is that more of our survey respondents were interested in spending more on shopping, with 35% choosing this answer compared to just 8.5% in the Mafengwo survey. And a couple of possible reasons for that difference is that our survey is specifically about outbound travel, whereas their survey was just about travel in general. And our survey also has a larger age range of respondents, whereas the Mafengwo survey only focused on young travelers. Now, what about payments? Although urban China is basically cash-free at this point, cash was still the most popular payment method used by our survey respondents on their last outbound trip, chosen by 57%. This was followed very closely by UnionPay card payments. And then, interestingly, of China's 2 leading mobile payment platforms, far more travelers had used Alipay on their last outbound trip than those who had used WeChat Pay. Accepting Chinese mobile payments is definitely something we recommend to businesses outside of China to better accommodate the Chinese market and even encourage them to spend more. Alipay in particular provides excellent marketing opportunities that help Alipay-ready businesses to stand out. Now let's turn our attention to destinations, looking first at Chinese travelers' interest in different world regions. We found that interest in 10 out of 11 world regions had increased since our spring survey. Southeast Asia was the only region that didn't get a higher score than last time, but it maintained its already high score. Compared to the spring, North America saw the biggest increase in interest, and compared to this time last year, the Middle East has seen the biggest increase in traveler interest. We continue to ask travelers in every survey to tell us how safe or unsafe it is to visit various destinations around the world. And during the peak pandemic years and directly after China's reopening, we used to see really big fluctuations in some of the safety rankings. But the results of this question are much less volatile now. You can see from the arrows on the left-hand side that there has been some fluctuation since our spring survey, but this is generally just a couple of percentage points in one direction or the other, and it's nothing dramatic. Perhaps because of riots this summer, the UK saw the biggest drop in its safety ranking, going from 4th to 8th place, and from 55% safe in the spring to 51% safe now. Kazakhstan was the most improved destination, going from 39% unsafe in the spring to 31% unsafe now, while their safe score rose from 23% to 25%. New to this list is the Maldives, which has debuted in 4th place, just below Switzerland, and Hong Kong and Singapore are perceived as the safest travel destinations once again. When it comes to booking travel, Chinese online booking platforms like Ctrip are by far the most popular, chosen by 72% of survey respondents. After that, our survey respondents were most likely to book their outbound travel on social media platforms like WeChat and Xiaohongshu, chosen by 36%, and 30% would book directly using the official channels of travel brands such as airlines and hotels. For finding outbound destination information, social media platform Xiaohongshu continues to top the list, with even more survey respondents choosing it this time than in our spring survey. Short video platform Douyin also gained in popularity, as did Ctrip. The most popular offline sources for destination information are friends, family, and acquaintances, followed by travel agents and tour guides. Now, what kind of content about overseas destinations are travelers looking for? Here again, we see high interest in promotional offers, as well as favorable policies like visa waivers, with these incentives chosen by 60%. Experience sharing by other travelers is also popular, as well as practical destination information. We found that travelers aged between 45 and 65 years old were more likely than the average to prefer travel tips and experience sharing by other travelers, while travelers aged 25 to 34 were more likely than the average to be looking for practical destination information, and travelers aged 18 to 24 were more likely than older travelers to prefer content by KOLs. Finally, looking to the future, we asked about the use of artificial intelligence in travel. We found that our survey respondents were fairly skeptical, with 51% saying it currently is not useful enough and 15% saying they don't believe in the usefulness of AI for travel. Only 10% were either optimistic about its future or had already had a positive experience with AI. Survey respondents were most likely to see the potential for AI in travel for language translation, as well as help with itinerary planning. So let's finish by reviewing the top takeaways from our survey data. First, Chinese travelers are making significantly more outbound trips this year compared to last year. We see this from industry data, from the ForwardKeys data, and also from our own survey, where 16% had already traveled outbound this year by mid-August, compared to only 4% at the same time last year. Second, travel motivations are diverse, including nature, city tours, theme parks, culture, and sports. Arts and culture and sporting events are draws for Chinese travelers' outbound trips, including pop concerts, museum visits, the Olympics, and more. Third, in a number of survey questions, we see high interest in discounts and promotions. This is a market that's more price conscious and seeking value for money than in the past, and they will be attracted to good deals. fourth interest in every world region is higher now than it was at this time last year. And we also see growth or stability for every region compared to our spring survey. Fifth, Xiaohongshu absolutely cannot be ignored by travel marketers, as it continues to grow in popularity among Chinese travelers looking for outbound travel destination information. And six, while Chinese travelers remain unconvinced by AI for now, they do see its potential for helping them with foreign languages overseas and with itinerary planning. So as I mentioned before, we will be sharing today's presentation slides with everyone later today, as well as a link to read and download the full September 2024 Chinese Traveler Sentiment Report. But if you can't wait to read the report, it is up already on the Dragon Trail website in the resources section of the website. Also on the resources section of the Dragon Trail website, you'll find a sentiment reports tab where you can find all of our previous Chinese traveler and travel trade surveys. In addition to sentiment reports, our free online resources include videos, Chinese social media rankings for online travel brands, marketing case studies and guides, and much more. You can also sign up for our monthly newsletter for updates and future webinar invitations, and follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and WeChat. So thank you so much, everyone, for your attention, and we are now ready to open up for Q&A session. I would answer first. There's one question from Mathieu about Golden Week used to be beneficial for non-Asian destinations like Europe. Do you see a shift of destination mix? So I think, as you can see from the Dragon Trail data, from the ForwardKeys data, and from the wider industry data shared by ly.com and the trip.com group, Europe will definitely be the long haul destination that is benefiting the most this Golden Week. There's very high interest in traveling to Europe. The increase in hotel bookings for Europe on the trip.com group platforms is really stunning, over 300% year on year. And as Nancy explained, there is just much better flight connectivity with Europe now, with Chinese airlines kind of focusing on that area of the world. So I think this will be the long-haul outbound destination that benefits the most. But also Nancy's data showed interest in Australia, and we see interest in Australia and New Zealand in our sentiment report as well. As well as the Middle East. I think Dubai continues to be a destination that is growing in terms of traveler numbers and interest. There's another question about spending and what are the Chinese spending on when they go overseas? Do you see them spending more on shopping or experiences? I think that shopping is definitely still something that's relevant, and we do see increases in tax-free shopping, for instance, with data that's released every month by Global Blue. But there has also been a long-term trend in the Chinese market with people focusing more on experiences and a little bit less on shopping over time. And we can certainly see from Dragon Trail's data that there is a big interest in kind of cultural experiences, sporting experiences, and also particularly in food and drink, which is always one of the main motivating factors behind Chinese travelers' outbound trips.
And actually talking about these travel motivations, I think I also got some interesting data to share here, because I see one question is for Hainan. So how about for booking for Hainan during Golden Week? So during Golden Week, actually, now with tickets, all the ticketing data issued until 19th of September. Sorry, let me refresh my data. So for the time being, the tickets issued for travel to Hainan compared to last year is still behind, like 20% behind last year. However, when we look a little bit earlier in earlier September, when Kanye West held its concerts in Haikou, we see a peak in travel activities from domestic China to Haikou. So I think that's the one of the example that we see now. The events such as these concerts are really attract more travelers to destinations. Yes, and I think maybe we can go through other questions, and I will do quickly for Hainan's figures during the Golden Week.
Okay, thank you. There's also a question about Chinese New Year as a travel period. Chinese New Year is definitely still going to be a top outbound travel period. We don't see any change in that. I think there was a question, maybe. I'm trying to go back to the slide about timing because we asked people about when they had taken their outbound trip. So that would include the month that Chinese New Year was in. But we're focusing obviously on the next week's Golden Week in this presentation, but we would expect Chinese New Year to be popular again for outbound travel when it comes time for that.
And usually for Chinese travel to Europe, they usually combine several destinations in one trip because it takes it's a long flight from China to Europe, and so people usually like visit several destinations rather than just focusing on one city and destination. However, nowadays we see more and more people travel in depth, so they choose one destination and to spend more time in destination. So that's also the trend we have noticed. But yes, usually that it's popular to combine destination in Europe for Chinese travelers.
Thank you, Nancy. So anyway, here's the survey data. So actually it does show that among our survey respondents, not many of them did their last outbound trip in Chinese New Year. But I think also that has to do with the way the question is worded, because we asked about your most recent 2024 outbound trip. So just because 4% said February doesn't mean that only 4% of them traveled in February. It just means that that was their last outbound trip. So if you go back here, we see that of the survey respondents who had traveled this year, 60% of them have taken at least 2 trips. So that might mean that they traveled at Chinese New Year, but they also traveled in May, and then they traveled again in July. And so in that case, their answer to this question would be July, even though they traveled in February. So just to clear up any confusion about that, Chinese New Year is still a peak period for outbound travel.
So maybe I can
quickly
go back to Hainan's topic.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so with all tickets issued as of 19th of September, we see that domestic travel to Hainan are currently 20% down on on last year's figures. Similar, Haikou and Sanya have similar performance, with Sanya 20% behind and Haikou at 19.5% behind. However, when we look at the travel time from 12th to 20th of September this year, we see domestic travel to Haikou has already reached last year's performance, and to Sanya like -3%. So we see the power of events here.
Thank you, Nancy. There's a question about outbound travel for Golden Week this year comparing it to Golden Week in 2019. So Nancy's presentation has quite a lot of detailed information about how it compares for different destinations. Overall, I think you found that travel is 15% behind 2019 levels. But then this varies quite a lot compared looking at different destinations, with some destinations like Malaysia actually having more Chinese bookings this year compared to 2019. So you'll see all of that information in Nancy's presentation slides, which we'll share with everybody later today. There's also there's a question about shopping. And if people are shifting their shopping habits from more traditional luxury brands to niche and local brands. So Dragon Trail actually did a whole webinar about shopping trends a couple of months ago, and you can find information about that on our blog, as well as a recording of the webinar where we invited retailers and Global Blue, for instance, Union Pay, to speak about shopping trends around the world. And yes, in general, we do see kind of a shift in shopping, not necessarily away from a luxury to cheaper things, but away from some of those big name brands to more niche local products. Because if you're shopping overseas, one way that might be still appealing when you have tax-free shopping in Hainan is if you're looking for brands that you can only get in Spain or only get in Italy, for instance. And so that means that people are really looking for those kind of niche local brands that they have to travel to those destinations for. And we have a lot more discussion of that with some retailers and shopping experts in that June webinar. So you can have a look for that on the Dragon Trail website. There's also some questions about the high use of cash on outbound trip. And yeah, I think it's quite interesting though in China is basically cash free. People are still using cash on their outbound trip. I think it doesn't mean that they're exclusively using cash. It was an open-ended question, so people just said all of the payment methods that they used on their outbound trip. But I think that people would be likely to use cash still because it's very, in any kind of outbound travel destination, you can't be sure that everywhere you go will accept Chinese payment methods. And then even if for instance, if you go to London, you can use Chinese payment methods at Harrods, for instance, but you can't necessarily use them if you just go to like a little local sandwich shop. So that's why people would still be continuing to use cash. And I do think there's been a big uptake in the past, I don't know, 5 years or so in businesses around the world and attractions, for instance, that can process Chinese payment types, including Union Pay and mobile payments. But further increasing this is a good thing for Chinese travelers, and I think overseas travel businesses too. There's also a question about interest in travel to Georgia. I think that it might have been mentioned by like a few of our survey respondents. I would need to check that data because the list of destinations that survey respondents wanted to go to in the future was very long, especially for Europe. But I do remember from the data released by Chunar about outbound flight bookings that Georgia was one of the destinations where they saw the highest growth this year compared to last year. And the visa waiver policy there will certainly have a positive effect, as we could see from Nancy's slides about the long-term impact of visa waiver policies. I think that's very obvious.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when looking at the data for the upcoming Golden Week travel, so travelers from China to Georgia increased by 33% on 2019 levels.
Nancy, there's a question about travel to Barcelona. Is that something that is easy to take a look at in your data?
Yes, but I didn't see this question. So the travel from China to Barcelona during the upcoming Golden Week. Now comparing to 2019 levels. So yes, it's 28% behind 2019 levels. For China travel to Barcelona. But if we compare to last year, obviously there should be an increase.
There's also a question. Sorry, I don't know if you're still looking for the data, Nancy, but I can jump in and answer a question about creating content campaigns with Ctrip. So Ctrip does offer marketing and advertising and partnership opportunities. It would depend, I guess, on what the travel brand is, and it is something in like media buy, for instance, on Ctrip that Dragon Trail can help to facilitate. So if you get in touch with us directly afterwards with specific questions about kind of what kind of campaign you might like to do with them, then we can speak more about how we might be able to help set that up. There's also a question about travel trends for Turkey. And I think as we can see from the data, there have been huge increases in flight bookings for Turkey. And I remember seeing earlier in the year some data released by the Turkish Tourism Ministry, where again we saw very big increases in Chinese traveler numbers to Turkey, and I think maybe that is facilitated by good flight connections now. However, it's starting from like a quite low level when you see the number of Chinese travelers to Turkey versus the overall overseas tourism numbers to Turkey. So China is still a niche market for this country, but it is one that is growing very rapidly, as we can see from the arrivals data and the forward bookings data.
Yeah, may I jump in? I just
Yes,
saw
please.
more questions about destinations.
Yeah.
So for Barcelona, I will mention if we compare to last year, then is 98% increase on last year's figures for Golden Week. We see other destinations like Belgium. So if we compare to last year, is 58% increase. And if compared to 2019, is down on 27%. Maybe we can also see Greece. Greece is a bit behind, like 51% behind 2019 levels. Yeah, but if we compare to last year, actually it's 37% increase.
Right. So yeah, I think overall, with the exception of some destinations which are now surpassing pre-pandemic levels, we see a market that is still behind where it was in 2019, but it does continue to catch up, and that this is something that we're seeing really consistently. Every quarter, every holiday is better than the one before. So I guess I would like to conclude the webinar by saying that we do confidently see that this upcoming Golden Week is going to be the best period for Chinese outbound tourism that we've seen since before the pandemic. So we're really looking forward to that next week. And I'm sure that my colleagues in China are looking forward to a much deserved holiday as well. So thank you so much to Nancy and Janice, and thank you everyone for attending. Again, we will be sending out the recording and the presentation slides later today, so you can look forward to those in your inbox.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.